Hello and good morning, everyone. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you from the learning and development community that is joining us today. I'm Janavi and I will be your host for today's session. And the topic for our webinar today is modernizing your biggest asset, your legacy courses. And I know with so much legacy content that we're dealing with in today's day, this is possibly a relevant topic for all of us here. This webinar is presented to you by Harbinger Interactive Learning, a global learning design and development company that specializes in e-learning, modernization, and custom e-learning solution development. So this webinar, we anticipate it to go for about 45 minutes. We expect the presentation to take about the first 30 to 35 minutes, followed by a dedicated Q&A session for about 10 minutes. Of course, that's not to say that we don't encourage any questions along the way. We hope that you interact with us and post your questions as we go along. You can use your Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. You'll see an option that says Q&A, or even the chat box to chat with all of us. And what I'll do is I'll bring those up to the presenter at the first opportunity. And of course, we'll take them at the end as well if we can't get to it in the middle. With that, now by way of introduction, it is my pleasure to introduce the speaker for today's session, Rahul Singh. He is a senior general manager at Harbinger Interactive Learning, and he comes with over 12 years of experience in the digital learning technology domain. He's extremely enthusiastic about helping organizations solve challenges and implement new initiatives that are around their digital learning strategy. And that's me, Janavi. Again, I've been working with Harbinger for over 10 years and a total industry experience of over 20. Have been involved in e-learning product strategy, marketing, as well as business developments. And I'm excited to be the host for this session today. So now, before I turn the stage over to Rahul, a few quick housekeeping items. Number one, if you cannot hear the audio, there is a phone call-in option that you will see. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see a microphone icon, and there's an upward arrow. So in that, if you go into audio options, you will be able to switch to a phone connection if that works better. Also, all attendees will be on mute by default, but please, if you want to speak to us, please raise your hand or post it in the chat window. And if you raise your hand, we'll be happy to unmute you, time permitting. Also, this session will be recorded, and a recording will be made available to all of you within a few days from this webinar in a follow-up email. So, and last but not least, we do encourage, like I said, questions from you along the way at the end whenever you're comfortable. And questions can be posed through the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to them as soon as we can. And if we cannot get to them in interest of time, we will be sure to address them in our follow-up email. So with that, let me not take up any more of your time and turn the stage over to Rahul. Rahul, over to you.
Thank you, Janavi. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning to everyone who's taken the time out to be a part of this webinar. We'll try and make this an insightful session. So to start with, first of all, let's define what do we mean by legacy digital content. Well, legacy content implies any content which has been created using technologies or programming techniques, for example, Flash, which are no longer supported by the latest devices, browsers, and operating system combinations. And what do we mean by modernization? Well, it is the process of converting the legacy Flash content to HTML5 while following latest design styles, maintaining quality, and learner demands. With that, let's take a poll And what I'll do now is I'll launch a poll. You'll get a poll on your screens coming your way right now. You'll have 30 seconds to select an option to answer. And the question is, do you have legacy Flash courses in your library? There are 4 options. Please select the most relevant option. This poll will be out there for, approximately 12 more seconds. Your responses trickling in. Last 5 seconds before we close this poll. Now let's look at the results. So for some reason, we are not able to look at the results, but the options that we had was, I'll talk about the results. The option that we had was, yes, we do have legacy courses and we plan to modernize them soon. Second option was, yes, and we are already in the process of modernizing them. The third is, yes, but we are not looking at modernizing them. And the fourth option is, no, we do not have an aging library of courses. So there's a equivalent response around it. Yes, we do have legacy courses, plan to modernize them around about 30%. Yes, and we are already in the process of modernizing them around about 25%. Yes, but we are not looking at modernizing them 20%. And the rest say that, no, we do not have an aging library of the courses. Thank you very much for participating.
Sorry to interrupt. I think you mentioned you weren't able to share the screens because we saw a screen that just said that had no numbers. So thanks for sharing that.
Okay, thank you, Janvi. Yeah. Right. So now let's look at the question as to why do we need to modernize? Now we all understand that digital transformation is disrupting industry after industry. And the concern is, with changes in technology, workforce, and regulations, the digital assets that we have are constantly under the threat of obsolescence. What are some of the drivers of these changes? So let's look at these drivers with some examples relevant to our industry. First one is technology updates. Flash has announced that it will sunset by 2020. Second is mobile devices. Mobile devices constitute a significant chunk of the target devices on which learning is happening now. The workforce learning needs are changing. The way millennial and Gen Zs want to learn is different. And then lastly, the changing regulations. For example, implementation of worldwide content accessibility guidelines, WCAG 2.0, is gradually becoming mandatory for digital content. And all of us in the learning and development ecosystem might be experiencing this in some size or shape. So now it's time to take another poll. So I'll launch the poll now. It should be coming your way now. So the question is, what is the most pertinent reason for you to modernize your courses? There are 4 options. Poll has been launched now. You should have the question and the options on your screen. Have it for another few seconds. Now let's end the poll, and I'll talk through the results because, again, I'm not be able to share the results because of some technical glitch. So the options that we had were create a better user experience. So that's like 15% of people say create a better user experience. To be able to use these courses beyond 2020, 45% people have chosen this option. Align your product strategy with your business strategy. 20% people have opted for this. And move away from proprietary tools. So another 20% people have selected this option. All right, so now moving ahead. So every organization who has legacy content might be experiencing some of these pain points in some size of the shape. So what are these pain points that we are talking about? So some of these pain points are with the Flash support in latest browsers going down day by day, even though it is said that 2020 is the sunset year, but a lot of browsers have already started, stopped supporting the Flash in their browsers, and that's leading to a lot of frustrated customers or learners or end users because they are not able to launch the courses at their end and not able to take those courses. The legacy courses might not be aligned to the current business strategy. So the strategy says that we want to provide cutting-edge learning technology solutions, and we want to cater to the mobile learning workforce, but the legacy courses are not aligned to this particular business strategy. And eventually, this will have an impact on the bottom line. So these courses might not sell that much if you are into the e-learning catalog business, or even if you are an internal service provider to your organization, you might not be able to generate the desired revenue out of these courses. And lastly, with these changing technologies, the courses are not future ready. So tomorrow, if there's another technology disruption, we might have to reinvent the wheel again and start from scratch. So these are some of the pain points that people are experiencing because of their legacy courses. Before we take a deep dive into the process as to how do we go about modernizing these legacy courses, let's look at some of the key aspects that we should look at addressing during the modernization process. The big picture here is use this initiative judiciously to get things done which could handle the technology disruptions and the modern learners' demands in the e-learning space for the coming years. So it's not just about migrating your Flash to HTML5, but it's more than that. And now is the time to invest in the future. So what are those key aspects that we should think about addressing while we go on the modernization route? What type of impact do we want to create on our customers, on our learners? What type of experience do we want to give to them? We should clearly be able to articulate that and bring that into our design process. Strategic alignment of goals. So what's your business strategy? How do you want to position yourself in the market? Be it the external market or be it the internal consumers. And are you able to align your modernization process with those strategies? Future-ready enhancements, making it future-proof. So, for example, building the courses in such a way that tomorrow, if there are any content changes, any regulatory updates, because of which the content needs to undergo some changes, you can easily manage those, and in-house as well, not depending upon a third-party supplier. The fourth key aspect to look at here is the resource management. So you have your internal teams who might be into the e-learning development piece of work, but then you have your new course content development work, you have your internal customers or external customers to cater to. So who manages this temporary workload? And majority of the times, this legacy courses, it's not about one course or 5 courses. It's about volume, and this needs to be done in a very specific period of time. So what do you do in that case? How do you judiciously use your internal teams and maybe bring on an extended development partner who can work with your teams collaboratively and get this work done? And last but not the least is weighing all the pros and cons against the bottom line. So the thought process is that we should look at those courses to modernize which would be useful. For example, you could have a library or a catalog of courses of 200 odd courses, but all those courses, would they be required in the future? Is there a scope of retiring some of those courses and just focusing on the right ones? So with that said, let's take a deep dive in the process as to how do we go about modernizing these courses. It's the 4D process: the define, design, develop, and deliver. This is a process which we use for the modernization projects. This is a very collaborative process wherein we work very closely with our customers to address their specific business objectives and needs. Now let's look at these Ds one by one. So first one is the define process. So it's all about defining the business objectives. What are we aiming at? What are we looking at? What type of conversion are we looking at? What type of enhancements do we want to get done? Do we really have the SME bandwidth available who can work on this modernization project, or this modernization should be done with very limited SME bandwidth? We should be thinking out of the box as to what tweaks do we make to our process. Is there a specific go-to-market plan? Is there a market opportunity, a business opportunity that we are trying to capture? And for that reason, we are trying to modernize this library of courses. Any specific tool or technology preference? Whether we are thinking of doing it in custom HTML5 or using any of the popular rapid authoring tools like Storyline. Depending upon, how easy would it be for your internal teams to manage these courses? And compliance needs. Does it needs to be Section 508 compliant or VCAG 2.0 compliant? So all these questions are put on the table during the define process, and what is best suited for the business is selected out of them, and then we move into the design phase. In the traditional e-learning development, we all use storyboards, but is it necessary? Is it required in the modernization project? Should we do a change log format for communicating edits between our teams instead of going through a robust storyboard process? And we could save some time and effort there. We could bring in agility. Designing templates. So we could create a template of library which would be reusable and will speeden up the development process. Whether we need to go with the custom HTML5 framework or the specific tool that we might have selected. And we finalize the design, and we ensure that there is a robust quality checklist that is created for every process, for every deliverable. And once we have selected the compliance standards, we ensure that there is a quality checklist for those compliance standards as well. And then we actually get into the development phase, which is basically about volume production following the design standards. The key aspect over here is automation. As we all know that these legacy courses would have been developed over a period of time, maybe say 10 years, 15 years period of time. They would have gone through multiple teams. So are the source files available for all these courses? If not, it's not a problem, because this automation utility can help you extract media assets from the courses. In parallel, the instructional design team is working on creating the change logs and collaborating with the client stakeholders to get sign off on the change logs. And then again, automation comes into picture while developing the courses. So we have extracted the media assets, the reusable media assets from legacy courses. We have created a template of a library of templates in the design process. And then we use the automation feature to develop the courses by reusing the media assets and the template library. Then it goes through the quality test, the rigorous quality test process. Then finally we come to the deliver stage, wherein we deploy courses on live systems. So courses are tested and ready to go live on LMS as COM packages. If you're an e-learning catalog provider, you might be getting these requests. For example, your end customers might be wanting to white label the courses or have the ability to customize certain section of courses if they want to add some certain standard operating procedures in the course, or add a few screens. So we ensure that these courses have the ability to be white labeled or customized based on the end user and customer needs. So this was all about the define, design, develop, and deliver process. Now quickly, let's look at a case study for the modernization project. About the customer, this is one of our customers. It's a Florida-based e-learning catalog provider, and their business objective is to deliver best-in-class online training and continuing education. The business need, they had a legacy course library of around 600 plus hours. And the challenge was, majority of them, 70 to 80% of them, were lacking source files. They wanted to modernize these courses and align these courses with their strategic business objectives. So modern look and feel, they should be responsive in nature, accessible on mobile devices, should have Section 508 compliance features built in. Courses, the legacy courses, should be broken down into micro-learning nuggets, which could be pushed through their mobile app. And there was a minimal involvement from customers' team, because the customers' team was busy working on the new content development, new course development. And it was a time-bound activity. There was a go-to-market plan to get these courses modernized within 5 months. And the solution that Harbinger team came up with was created an HTML5 responsive framework with templates designed as per customer guidelines. At the template level, we implemented the compliance standards, the Section 508. We developed custom automation utilities to extract assets from existing legacy courses. From a team perspective, we ramped up our instructional design and QA teams to meet the volume needs. And then eventually, to cut short on the time cycle of the project development, we automated the QA process as well. This is the workflow that we followed. So it started with the source course, the legacy course, review of the source course, create the change log. Both these activities were done by Harbinger. The customer involvement here was reviewing and signing off on the change log and delivering alpha, QA of the alpha against the change log, and then delivering the final. All this were Harbinger's responsibility. And when the final course was delivered, the review and sign off was the customer's responsibility. So this was a workflow that was developed with minimal customer involvement. Now let's look a little bit detailed insight into how this automation process actually works. What is this? We have been talking about using automation utilities, which have helped us in this modernization project. So few of the things which many of you would be able to relate easily are, these legacy courses could have been developed in multitude of environments. Some of them could be in custom Flash, some of them could be in articulate legacy tools like Presenter, Engage, or Captivate, Lectora. And over a period of time, the source files of some of these courses were either not available or the other possibility was it was not sure if they were the same as published SCOM packages. So that was the situation at the customer's end. So how did we handle these challenges? So the most important step to make this project successful was to extract content from these courses in a rapid speed while ensuring consistency. So the automation utility or the smart extractor pulled out the content and the media assets rapidly and placed them in an appropriate folder structure with specific naming conventions. And as the courses had to be responsive in nature, a custom XML structure was defined to enter content and media to be consumed appropriately by the courses. And since all the courses were following a set of templates, a responsive HTML5 generator utility was developed, which could create courses using appropriate templates and data from the responsive XML file. And then the courses were eventually packaged as COM files and were generated as responsive HTML5 courses. And the end result was a happy customer. Let's quickly see what the Senior Director of Content Development at our customer had to say. So we have been working with Harbinger Interactive Learning for more than 4 years now. During this period, our relationship with Harbinger has grown from e-learning vendor to e-learning partner. So we partnered with the customer in this cause, in this critical initiative to modernize their courses and meet their go-to-market plan within the specific defined budgets and timelines. Now quickly, a little bit about Harbinger Interactive Learning. So Harbinger Interactive Learning is a provider of innovative learning solutions focused on driving learning effectiveness in a cost-effective way. We cater to various industry verticals, primarily to the digital publishing domain, life sciences, banking, financial services, and insurance segment, retail organizations, and e-learning catalog companies. From a team perspective, we are about 100 plus e-learning professionals, and the varied skill sets that we bring on the table are instructional designers, multimedia developers, programmers, quality analysts, project managers. As an organization, at a group level, we are a 650 plus organization. Harbinger Interactive Learning is part of Harbinger Group. We have been in business for 27 plus years, dual shore operations with our offices in Pune and Redmond, Washington, and led by an experienced leadership team. So this is in a brief about Harbinger Interactive Learning. And with this, I hand it over to you, Janvi. I hope we have some time left for the Q&A session.
Absolutely, and thank you, Rahul. That was a very informative session, and I know I work closely with the teams, but just even though it sounds intuitive, the way you laid out some of the aspects to take into consideration while doing modernization, along the 4D process, I think that was very useful to me, so I've taken some notes. And yes, we definitely have time for Q&A. In fact, let's move right into that. So again, I do see a few questions already, but let me request the attendees, if you haven't already, if you have some questions about the process, the future readiness, any of the considerations that Rahul talked about, feel free, now's a good time to enter your questions in the Q&A or the chat box. Again, you'll find that option at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to enter your questions and we will take them as they come in. Also, if for some reason you're not able to access the Q&A or the chat box, shouldn't happen, but technology. If that happens, feel free to raise your hand. We do want to address your questions and we will be happy to either unmute you or you can reach out to us via email afterward. But let's go right in, Rahul, if you're ready. I have a few questions here over chat. So if you're ready, we can take that.
Sure,
the first one, and I think I see a question in Q&A as well as in the chat box. So the first one is the HTML to XML framework that you talked about, is that a proprietary sort of a platform or tool? Oh,
Yes, thank you.
in fact, I think I see a similar question on the Q&A box as well, saying, tell us more about the smart extractor, and is that a commercial tool? So I think they're related.
Yes, thank you, Janvi. So I'll try and answer both these questions. So first one, the HTML5 XML architecture or the framework. No, this is not a proprietary tool at Harbinger Interactive Learning. HTML5 is an open source technology. And what we do is we customize this open source technology to meet these specific needs and requirements. And at the end of the project, we deliver the course files along with the source code to our customers. And in future, if they want to update and maintain these courses, they could either use someone like Harbinger to do this, or they could, if they have in-house capability and skills, they could use their internal teams. And in quite a few occasions, we have trained people at the customer's end so that they could make the edits and changes at their own in the HTML5 XML architecture. Now, coming to the second question, the smart extraction utility. It's definitely not a product. It's part of the service, because every time we get on a modernization project, the legacy courses might be of different form and shape and size and technical specifications. So for example, some could be in Lectora and some could be in custom Flash. So what we do is we customize these utilities specifically for these the various different type of courses, and then we use them to get the courses developed. So it's part of the service, it's not a tool.
Great. And I have a question from Fernando. Is this webinar available? Is the recording available? Absolutely. We have recorded this webinar, this session, and a recording will be shared with you in a follow-up email in the next few days, as well as we will address any questions that we can't get to today. So feel free to write to us, info@harbingerlearning.com, or even in our chat box if we don't get to any of those questions right now. We will also send the answers to that in our follow-up email along with the link. So let's take the next question, Rahul. It's to do with microlearning and how does microlearning work for large courses? So how do you go about creating microlearning from a large legacy course? I think that's what they're trying to ask, perhaps. Because I think legacy is associated with large volume of content, and I believe.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So we assume that, okay, when you say a large course, you're saying that it could be a legacy course, an hour or 2 hour long course. So if we, in our define process, the first D of the 4D, in our define process, if we define that microlearning is a business need, then in the change log process that we do is our instructional designers would be able to clearly identify the instructionally sound logical chunks of a larger course and break them down and make them available as searchable nuggets. And what we could do is we could metadata tag them. That's just to ensure that it could be easily searchable and could be reusable. So breaking it down instructionally into logical chunks and making it available easily on search. So that's the basic concept. So yes, and that has to be done in the define process.
Great.
That's where it starts.
So that would be a consideration upfront, either in the define or design step, or when you're doing that. Fantastic. So there's another question in the Q&A, which is about converting Flash work, just converting Flash work as is. Can you value add and improvise during the recreation? So can you add, I think what they're trying to ask is, so rather than just converting it from Flash to HTML5, along the way, are you also creating, is it possible to create more value and improvise it during recreation?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for asking this question. And so this term modernization actually covers this aspect of not just as is conversion, but if it's a business requirement, or if the needs say that we need to have an enhanced design look. For example, the Flash course, if we just replicate it as is, it might not render very well on the HTML5 environment, and if it's being consumed on the mobile devices or handheld devices from the user experience perspective. So the value add over there is, of course, the look and feel of the courses could be refreshed, and they could be made more user friendly to be consumed on mobile devices, handheld devices.
Great, thanks. And I think there's another question. Could you go back to the framework slide if you don't mind? I think there's another question about the framework and the extractor in the last process about how to make it responsive. So if you could talk about that. I know we touched upon that a little bit.
Absolutely.
So the course creator piece. I think the last two where we're talking about the responsive page creation generator and the course creator.
Absolutely. So the idea is in the design phase, if we have chosen HTML5 as the preferred option, so we create a template library. And at the template creation stage itself, if the requirement is to make it responsive, so the templates are made responsive, and this responsive template library is available during the development process. And if there are certain additional elements which need to be incorporated, for example, if the courses need to be Section 508 compliant, SCORM package, so all those things could be programmed at a template level. And once we have the templates and once we have extracted the content from the legacy courses, now we have to map the content to the new template that we have designed as per the change logs. So that content mapping also happens through an automated utility. And once the content is mapped, then it's about packaging these individual HTML5 courses as a course package, and the end output is what you get is a responsive course with SCORM packaging or Section 508 features implemented in it. And the beauty is that these template libraries could be reusable for multiple projects.
Great. No, thank you for that. I think I saw a couple of people who had questions about this. So thanks for going over that again. Here's perhaps we have time for maybe one more question or two. Let's see. Here's another one. So they're asking, are there any recommendations on selecting the courses for repurposing? So I guess maybe implying, do some legacy courses lend themselves, or are there any characteristics of courses that lend themselves better than others to modernization? So any recommendations on selecting courses for repurposing?
Right, thank you. So I'll kind of break the answer into two parts. If you're an e-learning catalog provider, or you're in the business of creating courses, and then you have end customers who subscribe to your courses, then the guiding point could be, what is the current market need? What type of courses are your customers subscribing to? And if you have to select the best possible lot which you want to put through the modernization process, I think you should look at the enrollment numbers. So which courses are the ones where you are getting the maximum number of enrollments, which typically means they're selling the most. So they should be your priority list. That's one way of looking at it. And then there could be multiple ways through which a particular organization decides to look. And the second situation could be if you're an organization, an L&D organization within a corporation, and if you have internal customers and stakeholders. The same situation could apply is what is the current business requirement, or where are we looking at the maximum number of enrollments? If there are some courses, let's say if there are compliance courses and those courses need to undergo a lot of content changes and some of the assets within the courses are outdated, for example, the images, the video, those courses might not be the right candidate to put through the modernization process. Maybe we can think of creating those courses from scratch as a new course development. So these could be the two guiding features when you're within an internal organization supporting the L&D functions.
Great. No, I think you called it out nicely, the characteristics of a course as well as the business need and kind of tying the two together. Let's see, maybe one last question, if that's okay with you, Rahul. I think we have a minute more. So there's one question which is about creating courses. Does creating courses in HTML5 create a dependency on your team from a maintenance perspective? And I think by your team, they mean Harbinger Interactive Learning. So would there be a dependency going forward on Harbingers for maintenance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, the HTML5 XML architecture, if we use that as the route for modernization, and at the end of the project, we deliver the source files along with the course code. And if there is internal capabilities within the organization to make edits in that HTML5 XML architecture, they can do it in-house. The second thing is, since this is not a proprietary tool, they can use Harbinger or someone like Harbinger. And the third option is, Harbinger could upskill some of the team members at your end, at the customer's end, to ensure that they could handle those changes at their end. So these are the various multiple options. And to summarize, no, it does not necessarily means that if you use the HTML5 XML architecture to develop these courses, you'll have to come back to us for any maintenance and update of these courses.
Great, that's great to know. Thanks, Rahul. I think it's almost time. We're at the end of the webinar time slot. So I do see perhaps one or two more questions that we didn't get to, but please be assured that we will get to them in the follow-up email that we send out, along with the webinar recording of today's session. So with that, we'll leave the chat box, the webinar open for a few more minutes for any last-minute questions that might trickle in. But till I do that, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day today and joining us for this webinar. We were really excited to be presenting this to you, and we hope you have found it insightful as well. Again, this recording will be shared with you shortly in the next couple of days. And in case you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us by email at info@harbingerlearning.com, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions and include them in our follow-up. So once again, on behalf of Harbinger Interactive Learning and Rahul, I'd like to thank you and wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.